Many consider the Hidden Arsenal / Duel Terminal series a mixed result. For every solid archetype like Dragunity and X-Sabers and strong synchro monsters like Brionac, you would end up with flops like Ally of Justice and Genex. Today's archetype falls into the latter, as this is a series about the archetypes that didn't succeed, and unfortunately Mist Valley was one of them. Mist Valley is a wind archetype that benefited from returning cards in the field to the hand. The mechanics were straightforward, with not many restrictions. However, the advantages you gained from playing them were weak and not worthwhile, as you'll see from the first wave of support. Mist Valley Watcher was a level 4 wind normal monster with 1500 attack and 1900 defense. Mist Valley Thunderbird was a level 3 wind monster, and whenever it was returned to your hand, you would special summon it back to the field, but it couldn't attack. Mist Valley Shaman was a level 3 tuner with 1200 attack, which would allow you to return one other monster on your side of the field to gain 500 attack. Finally, Mist Valley Soldier was a level 4 tuner with 1200 attack, that can bounce your opponent's monsters that wasn't destroyed in battle with this monster back to their hand. Of all 4 cards, the only one that saw any play at the time was Mist Valley Soldier. The ability to bounce back monsters was beneficial at getting strong synchro monsters off the board that couldn't be removed by other means, like Stardust Dragon and Blackwing Armored Master. The fact that it was a level 4 tuner was also a bonus, as the game had very few choices with level 4 tuners. Rose, Warrior of Revenge, was the next heavily played used level 4 tuner, but the other options, like Debris Dragon and Hyper Synchron, had so many limits on using them. Debris Dragon could only be used to summon Dragon-type synchro monsters, and the materials couldn't be level 4. At the same time, Hyper Synchron gave the synchro summon monster using it an extra 800 attack if it was a Dragon Synchro, but would banish the face-up monster at the end phase. Mist Valley Soldier would be a solid addition to decks, as it was versatile as removal and a tuner during its stay in the meta. To round up the first wave of support with this archetype, we have the boss monster, Mistworm, a level 9 Thunder Synchro monster. It required a tuner plus 2 or more non-tuner monsters, and when it was synchro summoned, you could target up to 3 cards your opponent controls and return them to the hand. The card was one of the strongest synchro monsters in the early 5D era. It was the first generic level 9 synchro monster. On top of that, the ability to return 2 cards to your opponent's hand was terrifying. Battle traps like Mirror Force and Magical Cylinder were useless when this card came to the field. It gained even more popularity when Formula Synchron was introduced to the TCG set Starstrike Blast. With its ability to help you synchro summon during your opponent's main or battle phase, you could interrupt your opponent's plays by synchro summoning to Mistworm and bounce back up to 3 cards, disrupting any chance of your opponent establishing a board. Mistworm would be the go-to level 9 until Hidden Arsenal 2, when a well-known monster named Trishula was introduced. It was still, however, used as a cheap option if budget players couldn't afford Trishula, and the card was just as potent as bouncing cards to the hand was still effective board removal. However, this still didn't make Mist Valley as a whole playable. The fact that you didn't have any combo starters to establish a board with Mist Valley cards was abysmal. The format at the time had faster decks, like Blackwings, Lightsworns, and Quick Draw Dandy, that had starter cards that put more than 1 card in the field every turn. The archetype was already at a disadvantage due to being aligned with the Wind attribute, which was the game's least supported attribute. Without any search cards or draw power like how Allure of Darkness was for dark monsters, there weren't any good cards that Wind monsters could utilize. Because of all of these drawbacks, making this deck was nigh impossible. And with only 3 main deck monsters and 1 synchro they couldn't even make with all the established monsters, Mist Valley was already on the verge of being a flop. In Gold Series 3, Mist Condor and Mist Valley WINDMASTER popped in from the Duel Terminal series. Mist Condor was a level 4 wing beast monster that could be special summoned by returning one of your Mist Valley cards you control to the hand, and if you do, the card's attack becomes 1700. Mist Valley WINDMASTER was a level 2 tuner monster with a once per turn effect that if both players had 5 or more cards, you could activate this effect to make both players send cards from their hands to the graveyard until both players had 4 cards. Mist Condor saw play as simply an extender and an extra body on the field. WINDMASTER, however, was too gimmicky and depended on your opponent to have 5 or more cards as well. It also didn't help that this card was introduced when archetypes like Infernity were around and operated with no cards in hand. Since you were also playing a deck that returned your cards to your hand more than bouncing your opponent's cards, it made no sense to even play this card. The underlying fact is that both of these cards still didn't help with the main issue here. No searchers, and no good engines outside of another extender. It wouldn't be until Hidden Arsenal 2 that this deck would get more support. Mist Valley would get 4 new cards in Hidden Arsenal 2, 4 main deck monsters, and a new synchro. Mist Valley Baby Rock was a level 2 tuner monster with 400 attack and 600 defense. When it's sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can special summon it. This card would see play, but not just in Mist Valley. as it didn't benefit from the Mist Valley cards, including the new support. The Mist Valley archetype didn't have any effects to discard monsters. That didn't stop this card from being used in archetypes like Dragunity though. Mist Valley Baby Rock would combine well with the ability of Dragunity Knight, God Darg, who would let you add a level 4 or lower dragon or winged beast type monster from your deck to your hand, then discard a winged beast or dragon type monster from your hand. You would discard your Baby Rock with this effect to special summon that Baby Rock to your side of the field, giving you a level 6 and a level 2 to synchro summon with. The card did have some drawbacks though, as its effect wasn't a mandatory trigger, but an optional one. It has to be the last card going off for it to activate its effect. If you use it for the costly effect of Dragon Ravine or any danger monster, it won't activate since its effect is when and not if. This alone would limit how much this card was played and test everyone to see if they knew what an optional trigger was. Next to be introduced was Mist Valley Executor, a level 5 Thunder effect monster with 2100 attack. If it was normal summoned, you could return all face-up spell and trap cards in the field to the hand. This card was already unplayable because it had to be tribute summoned for its normal summon, or the fact that you most likely would have to play a special attack like Molosseum of the Emperor just to get the effect that bounces back face-up spell and trap cards. At the time, there weren't many face-up spell and trap cards dangerous enough to warrant playing this card, and the few that could be were either field spells that were redundant to return to your hand or your opponent's hand, or powerful traps that you wouldn't want your opponent to get back like Fiendish Chain. This card was deemed irrelevant to the archetype and wasn't really needed to play the deck. The next card introduced was Mist Valley Falcon. This Winged Beast level 4 monster was stacked at 2000 attack, but you needed to return one card you controlled to your hand in order for it to declare an attack. Although cards with a cost to attack rarely see play, this card's cost could easily be met as it just needed one card you control to be returned to your hand, regardless of it being face up or face down. So you could simply set a card, enter the battle phase, and swing with a 2000 attack beat stick and just return that set card. You could also recycle dead continuous cards if the monster was removed, besides destruction, or safe zone if you targeted your opponent's monster with safe zone to return to your hand and destroy your opponent's monster due to safe zone leaving the field. However, the basic combo with this card was to return an established Mist Valley Thunderbird that you attacked with back to your hand to special summon Thunderbird back to the field. Still, this combo was redundant as it didn't advance your game state any further, as all this did was just put the cards that were already on the board back onto the board. In an era where Xyz and Link monsters weren't in existence, this did no service to any Mist Valley player or anyone wanting to play Mist Valley Falcon. The Mist Valley's archetype's main star is Mist Valley Apex AVIAN, a level 7 Winged Beast monster. Once per turn, if a card or effect is activated, you can return one Mist Valley monster to the hand to negate the card or effect, and if you do, destroy it. This card was the strongest of the Mist Valley monsters, as it was the archetype's only Omni-Negate. However, it wasn't Mist Valley that would get the most optimal use out of it. Ninjas was the first of many to use the monster, as it was a great way to use your Ninjutsu Art of Transformation to tribute your ninja monster to special summon Avian from your deck. It also saw a lot of playtesting in pendulum decks when pendulums were introduced in the TCG in 2014, as it was easily brought to the field by Stargazer Magician and Timescale Magician into your pendulum zone, and then pendulum summoning Avian from your hand. The card was slowly power crept out of pendulum decks as it became less searchable as pendulums were getting archetypes like Ignites and Performapals. The card conflicted with engines in the pendulum decks and ended up being more of a brick to play than a helpful Omni-Negate. The card would be put aside until the release of Duelist Overload, where the card would be used in combo boards established by Simorgh, Burn of Sovereignty. This card was a Link 3 Winged Beast monster. It couldn't be used as a Link material, and your opponent couldn't target it or any Winged Beast monsters it pointed to with card effects. If it would be destroyed by battle, you could destroy a Simorgh card you controlled instead. And during the end phase, you could special summon one Winged Beast monster from your hand or deck with a level equal to or less than the number of unused spell and trap card zones on the field. This allowed you easy access to Mist Valley Apex AVIAN, as the max number of unused spell and trap cards was usually equal to or more than Avian's level when you're going first. Decks would also use Union Carrier to fetch the familiar Mist Valley Thunderbird for an endless loop of negating your opponent's cards and effects with Apex Avian. As long as decks had access to Winged Beast monsters like Harpy Ladies or the Tri-Brigade, the Simorgh Avian loop was possible. Even decks that don't utilize heavy Winged Beast monsters had ways to make the Avian loop, like Time Thief, who could use cards like Raid Raptor Forstrix to fetch extenders like Raid Raptor Singing Lanius, and then bring a card back like Time Thief Bezel Ship along with a special summon Lanius to go into Y-Strix to fetch a level 4 Dark Winged Beast type monster, mainly a Zephyros the Elite, to have all the required materials to establish another 4 Strix to fetch another Dark Wing Beast monster to special summon and rank up spell card through Y Strix to have all the pieces to end with a Cyber Dragon Infinity, Union Carrier, and a Simorgh equipped with the Mist Valley Thunderbird. At the end phase, you would just pop your Apex Avian down through Simorgh's effect for a board of endless negates. It got even more play with the introduction of Fluender Ree's archetype, which was a perfect match for this card. The archetype was all Wing Beast and the abilities revolved around tribute summoning and normal summoning Wing Beast monsters. This allowed you to play Apex Avian without any worries about it conflicting, as cards like Flunder Ree's in England and Flunder Ree's in the Unexplored Winds can make it easier to bring out Apex Avian to the field. While you can still play Apex Avian and Flunder Ree's, you can't do the same crazy antics with Union Carrier and Simorgh, as Union Carrier was banned in March of 2021. And Simorgh, Bird of Sovereignty, was placed on the Forbidden List in February 2022, but it's still roaming around in Master Duel without Union Carrier. So you can conclude that this is the best card in the Mist Valley archetype. Being able to negate cards or effects, whether monsters, spell, or traps, is nothing to slouch at. And if any more Mist Valley or generic Wind decks are introduced, expect this card to be playtested with them. The final Mist Valley card introduced in Hidden Arsenal 2 was Mist Valley Thunderlord, a level 7 synchro. It had a quick effect where you could target one other card you control and return it to your hand to have this monster gain 500 attack until the end of the turn. While it was nice for this deck to get another synchro, it was very lackluster. Bouncing a card on your side of the field just to gain 500 attack wasn't a worthwhile effect. There were also just better generic level 7 monsters to choose from. The card would be played, but only used to beat over a stronger monster. Still, the third wave didn't help Mist Valley in any way, and still neglected the underlying problem that this deck was dysfunctional. All that was given was a level 7 monster that didn't see play until 2 formats later. And when it did, it wasn't for Mist Valley decks as a whole. They wouldn't receive any support from Hidden Arsenal 3, but they got a new card in Storm of Ragnarok and a very impactful field spell card. Divine Wind of the Mist Valley was a field spell card that, once per turn, if a wind monster you control returned to your hand, you could special summon one level 4 lower wind monster to your side of the field from the deck. This card was the first generic wind support spell to search any level 4 or lower wind monster. Mist Valley could use this card to special summon necessary tuners or monsters from the deck to go into synchro plays and establish a better board at the end of their turn. Unfortunately, the hope for this card even seeing long-term play was dashed as the card became part of a consistent FTK involving Harpy's Dancer. The combo would start with 2 cards, with Harpy's Dancer and Divine Wind being played. You would then activate the effect of Dancer to return it to your hand to get an extra normal summon, it being Harpy Channeler. You'd then activate the field spell to fetch Genex Blastfan to your side of the field. Blastfan would then search for another card useful for Mist Valley, but also crazy good in FTK decks in general, Genex Ally Birdman. Birdman's effect would allow you to bounce Blastfan back to your hand and special summon Birdman to synchro summon Ancient Fairy Dragon. You would then use our menacing synchro FTK Dragon to pop the Divine Wind and add another Divine Wind spell card from your deck to your hand. You'd also special summon the Blastfan back to the field. Blastfan would add another Birdman and you get the point. They'll loop into Ancient Fairy Dragon again, search Divine Wind, special summon Blastfan, get Birdman, use his effect, use Divine Wind to special summon Stratos, search for Lady Heart in your hand, go into another Fairy Dragon, fetch Black Garden, then you'd play Black Garden, use the new Ancient Fairy Dragon to play Genex Recycled from your hand, then use 2 of the Ancient Fairy Dragons to go into Galaxy Tomahawk and make tokens. You'd then synchro into Genex Ally Axel using the last Ancient Fairy Dragon and Recycled, special summon Genex Recycled back through the effect of Axel to make Powerful Dragon, search out Symbol of Heritage, and use it to special summon Ancient Fairy Dragon again, use Ancient Fairy Dragon to search out Fusion Gate, play Fusion Gate and use his effect to special summon 3 Blaze Phoenixes to burn them for game as Blaze Phoenix burns for 300 for every card in the field, including the tokens on your opponent's side of the field that Black Garden created. Now, doesn't that sound fun to play against? Unanimously, the whole community said no. And so did Konami when they put Divine Wind and Birdman to 1 on the limited list. Just like that, Mist Valley was robbed of its support because of circumstances outside of its control. The cards it directly needed were placed inside degenerate decks and ended up screwing up any chance its deck had of being playable. The last card brought out for Mist Valley appeared in Order of Chaos. Shrine of Mist Valley was another field spell that lets you play a level 3 wind monster from your deck whenever a wind monster was destroyed by card effects once per turn, but the monster's effect was negated. As desperate as Mist Valley needed searching ability and getting monsters to float out of the deck, this card wasn't good in any instance. Only getting wind monsters via card effects limits the chances of getting monsters to the field. Also, the monster being a negated level 3 took away good options you could summon from the deck, like a Mist Valley Thunderbird, who was the key piece to setting up any of the Mist Valley plays. This was the final piece of direct support from the deck and took the deck from unplayable to dismantleable. So, what did we learn about Mist Valley that we didn't already know? Nothing new, to be honest. The deck had no chance of being good and had too much against it. It was made with a heavily unsupported attribute. The effects weakened your board more than strengthened it, and the few playable cards were directly or indirectly saw play in better control boards or consistent FTKs. No direct searchers were given to it, and it only had 2 spell traps to help slow down your opponent. The deck was doomed to fail from the start, and any chances seeing support might not be suitable for the game, as Wing Beast and Wind support have been plentiful. It might be hard to make support for it, as its mechanic of bouncing cards back to the hand might break other decks that utilize the same mechanics. Bouncing cards back to the hand is still a powerful form of TCG removal. Also, the deck was limited in cards that could benefit from being bounced back to the hand. Mist Valley Thunderbird was the only card that had an effect that helped every aspect of Mist Valley, as it was the only card that could special summon itself back to the field and was a solid extender. Without this card, the mechanics of this deck would stall, and you'd spend turns just normal summoning and passing your turn. So for right now, it's best to leave this deck back in the early 2010s and just write it off as another flop, as another archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh's failed cards.